Have you ever wanted to paint faster? Have you ever watched a video of someone creating a masterpiece in an unbelievably short amount of time and wondered, how the hell did they just do that? Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I saw this video, and it truly stunned me how they were able to create an entire portrait painting from start to finish in only 40 minutes. So naturally, I went ahead and followed along with their video, not once, not twice, but 3 times in order to see what type of techniques, tools, brushes, and workflows that they have in order to create a full portrait painting in so little time. You can check out the full process video, which also included a detailed explanation and use case for each brush over here. But in this video, I'll be sharing 5 of the key lessons regarding how to paint faster that I learned through this process. I don't want to waste your time, so let's get right onto the first lesson. The first key lesson I learned about how to paint fast is to minimize layers. It really surprised me just how few layers that 씰Seal used throughout this painting process, but I guess it should be expected. I think we all know the painful feeling of having to jump through a bunch of layers to get to the layer that you actually want to paint on. And sometimes it can just get really overwhelming having to try and navigate back and forth between so many layers. So minimizing the number of layers you have can greatly help make the painting process feel more fluid. Another reason for minimizing the number of layers you have if you want to paint faster is that another aspect of painting fast is all about not overthinking things. So removing the safety net of having an individual layer for each small thing actually helps a lot to get you into that zone of painting. I know that this might be a hard tip to implement for some of you guys out there, especially if you're anything like me and tend to overthink and use way too many layers. But if you try it out, you'll find that it's really not that scary, and that any mistake that you make will likely still be pretty easily fixable, even without having the components separated onto different layers. I'm not saying to have everything on just one layer, but just to try and reduce the number of layers that you use. When you time yourself like in this study, you'll be able to notice the difference that it makes. Even if it only saves a few seconds of searching at a time, it really reduces the mental overhead needed to keep track of what you have on each of your layers. The second lesson is a pretty obvious one, but during my study it was very interesting to see just how interlinked this was with other aspects of portrait painting. This is that understanding the fundamental structure and planes of the face is very important. I think most people know that it's very important, but aren't sure in exactly what ways that this knowledge actually applies to portrait painting, and also just how widely it can help you out. This knowledge was used to inform me about some of the decisions made throughout the painting process, and helped me to understand the shapes that were used. For example, at this stage where 씰Seal is painting this stroke here, it becomes quite clear what the significance of this stroke is, which is that it's used to define the indentation caused by the eyebrow ridge and the protrusion of the eyeballs. This is important to know because then you can more carefully monitor how dark you're making this crevice, since you'll know that this crevice is not as pronounced on female faces compared to male faces. Another important aspect of facial anatomy knowledge is that this will help you with the shape of this, since you know that you need to define the eyeball protrusion and the eyebrow ridge, and the shapes of both of these are very specific and important to get right. Anatomy knowledge was also important in making value decisions in this painting. One big mistake that I made, which I didn't spot for a long time, is that the value of the cheek here was darker than the value of the surrounding skin. This is a problem because the cheeks are supposed to be protruded out of the face, which means that since the light is coming from here, the cheeks should definitely be brighter than the rest of the skin. Otherwise, it just sort of looks off, as if this part of the skin here is the part that is protruded and the cheeks are actually caved inwards. And the reason I was able to spot this mistake links directly with the third key lesson from this study, which is to always keep in mind values. Now, the importance of values really can't be emphasized enough, and you'll find plenty of videos talking about it on YouTube. Value is what defines form, lighting, and texture. So when your values don't agree with each other and don't agree with the lighting condition, then your painting will look a bit off. But having incorrect values is something that is quite hard to spot, especially if you have a complex painting with so many elements and colors. So an extremely crucial tip to keeping track of your values is to view your painting in grayscale. As soon as I toggled my painting to grayscale, I was able to easily pinpoint this mistake that I made with the cheeks. Viewing your image in grayscale really helps you to solely focus on the values in your painting and not be tricked and distracted by the colors present. There's plenty of artists that take this a step further and actually do a significant portion of their painting only in grayscale. But for most artists, simply toggling your artwork to grayscale every now and then should be enough to help you stay on track. Lots of digital painting softwares offer easy ways to switch back and forth. If you don't know how you do that, then I've made a video on how to do it here. Anyways, if you don't already check your painting's values with grayscale, I really can't recommend it enough. Another key lesson that I learned is that the brushes that you use is very important. Now, I know we all hate it when people say that digital art is easy after seeing what some of the brushes are capable of. And I know that some people think of using these overpowered brushes as cheating. But if you truly want to be able to paint faster, better, and more efficiently, then you gotta learn how to use the right brush for the right situation. Though this is after you've got a good grasp on the fundamental brushes, such as the two that I talked about in this video. For this study in particular, it really struck me just how efficiently and cleanly you can paint hair if you use the right brush. A good hairbrush will do about 70% of the work, but if you don't know how to paint hair to begin with, then you probably won't get a very good result. When painting hair, the key principles to keep track of is just your values, overall shape, and stroke direction. And a general understanding of how to paint hair combined with a good hairbrush will have you covered for 2 out of 3 of those principles. And with values, an important property to include for the hair is these highlights. That's something that will help sell the believability of the hair. Another brush that greatly helped me was this clean sketch brush, which made the process of painting the eyelashes a lot more efficient. On the other hand, however, it's also very easy to worry too much about the type of brush to use. Like realistically, you don't really need a brush pack with hundreds of different brushes. At the end of the day, lots of these brushes do basically the same thing, and the differences in texture or shape is very small, so it's best to try and keep it simple. 씰Seal only used about 7 different brushes throughout this process, and her full brush pack only has 13 brushes. This is a pretty good number that will have you covered for almost any situation, and you can always have other brushes for more specific situations, but I recommend just having a single folder with all your main brushes that you'll be using 95% of the time, so then you can easily access them and you don't have to jump around different folders. That's why I've grouped the brushes that I used in my ┰Seal study into just a single folder, and I've kept it to just the best brushes that I have for each given situation. One thing that I've honestly sort of forgotten with all these fancy and extremely useful digital tools like layers, clipping masks, curves, selection tool, liquify, etc. is that digital painting is still all just about painting. If you want to be able to paint fast, then you need to just keep on making brushstrokes on the canvas. One of the key things that always slows me down is when I step back and take a look at my painting and then think, maybe I'll just move this a little bit to the left. So then I use the selection tool or liquify to make that tiny adjustment, which seems like a big change in the moment but becomes pretty unnoticeable later on. And I think this is a very easy trap to fall into with digital painting. It's just so easy to make small changes like this that it becomes very time consuming and often doesn't even feel that fun. Like throughout the video, if you look at ┰Seal, then they are pretty much constantly painting. It was just a paint stroke after paint stroke with no hesitation. They barely used any of the fancy digital tools. So if you want to be able to make a finished painting quicker, then don't let these tools constantly distract you. Now, obviously I'm not saying to stop using these tools. These tools are complete game changers and are very important, but too much of anything is bad. And to actually make progress on your painting, then you need to just keep on laying down these brushstrokes. This is how you'll truly be able to finish the painting and be able to paint faster. Alright, I avoided saying this for the whole video, and I tried my best to provide more unique and specific tips on painting faster. But it's time to address the elephant in the room, which is that if you want to paint faster, then you really just gotta practice. That's why in my full ┰Seal study video, I went over some more key concepts and also provided explanations and use cases for the very powerful and versatile brushes that I used for the painting. You can find this video on my Patreon for $9.99. I'm just joking. It's right here. Anyways, I highly recommend you watch and follow along with that video so you can actually apply and practice some of the things you've learned in this video. Anyways, I truly thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time.